dum, dum. Welcome, everyone, to this broadcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about the subject of catastrophic thinking, catastrophizing, catastrophe. It's the end of the world as we know it, right? This is a problem for many of us. And what I'm going to share with you, welcome those of you coming to this broadcast, Mark DeJesus here. What I'm going to share with you is not something I'm just observing from an outside perspective. This is something I've gone through, and God is continuing to heal me more and more in my life, is the subject of making everything a catastrophe, as though you are working with a ticking time bomb at any moment, right? And you may say, well, I don't do that with everything. And I'm not saying necessarily everything, but when the habit of catastrophic thinking gets into your coping skills, it really blocks us from being able to work through what we really need to work through and how we really need to work through it. And so there are many of you, you have anxiety, and your catastrophic thinking increases anxiety, and you have anxiety over having anxiety. You have panic attacks on top of anxiety. You have anxiety on top of feeling depression. You have OCD, and then you have catastrophic thinking that goes on top of it, right? Or maybe this catastrophic thinking pattern takes any situation and just bursts it into a place of despair. We kind of hit that despair switch, right? And I talk about this often in my coaching work with people, is how often do you hit the despair switch? The despair is not depression. It's not discouragement. It's that drop, where just free fall. You just kind of hit a switch and that's it. I can't take it anymore. And life isn't and the dominoes start happening, right? So this video is intended to encourage you to work through catastrophic thinking. My goal is not to try to give you an imagery of make it all go away kind of thinking, because that's what we often do in our problems. Make it all go away. God, fix this. God, alleviate this. God, do something about it. Hey, you do something about it. What I want to do is I want to empower you in your healing and freedom journey to learn to recognize where you fall into catastrophic thinking patterns and allow God to do some healing work in your life. Now, what exactly is it? What are we talking about when we're dealing with it? You can look this up for yourself, but I'm just going to give you some basic things to consider. When it comes to catastrophic thinking, basically what we're looking at here is some thinking patterns that you have. And if the thinking pattern leans into overestimating, I highlighted that word, overestimating how bad a particular outcome could be, overestimating how bad things are, while also underestimating your ability to cope or to handle it. So it's kind of like, here's what I'm going through. It's this bad, it's terrible, it's awful, and it keeps going and going. It dominoes, and once the dominoes start falling, it just goes further and further. So the problem increases. It tags on with other things in the past, right? So what happens is usually it hits on something similar that's happened to you. Like maybe you feel like you got the short end of the stick, and you go see, and it lines up with something that happened in your childhood, and then it hits this domino connection, and it just proves that this thing is just never going to work out. You're never going to break through and all that. That's an example of catastrophic thinking. So it increases it while it diminishes your ability to handle it. And it conditions you to remain in a state of hopelessness, in a state of helplessness. I'm beyond being helped. And God, maybe I'll throw up a flare to you. You'll come and rescue me. But other than that, I don't know what else to do. And so what we usually do is we hit this cap in our growth, because in your healing and freedom journey, you're going to hit resistance. You're going to be working through areas, and you're going to take 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. And I'm going to tell you that's progress. And some of you are going to say, what? 3 steps forward and 5 steps back is -2. You took a step out. And it's going to take practice for that new way of thinking and perceiving to become a regular part of your life. So many of you out there are getting so deeply discouraged because you're taking steps And then you have these regressions, or you feel like you're falling backwards. No, you're just practicing. And if I want to be a tennis player and I go out on the court and get upset at all the times the ball goes out of bounds, or I miss the ball or something, I would realize I need practice, and lots of it. Why don't we apply that to our mental, emotional, relational health world? Why don't we apply that to our discipleship? You know, when Jesus said, "It is done, it is finished," what he accomplished and what he came to do was finished. But you and I aren't finished. We're still on our journey. We're in our process. And we have this expectation as though we should arrive into everything overnight. So catastrophic thinking becomes a big habit, and it's a dangerous habit. It's unhelpful for you. So it's a thinking pattern of overestimating how bad an outcome could be or how bad things are. And then you underestimate your ability to cope or handle it, because many of us live with a low sense that we can handle anything, a whole lot of anything. There's such a lack of belief in who God is in us to walk with us through the storms of life, and that we have what it takes in him to overcome. So these thinking patterns become ruminating thoughts. You ruminate. They increase. You get lost in your head, and that worst case scenario gets bigger and bigger. Then you start convincing other people of this worst case scenario. You start using it. Maybe you warn other people, or maybe you see it as gospel truth. You may develop a catastrophizing habit. That word is sometimes, I have to enunciate it, catastrophizing, to get it out. Otherwise I can't even say the word right. You automatically lean to the worst case scenario. It kind of becomes your default mechanism. You lean into that. So what you do is when you describe your pain, you often exaggerate it, and it's okay. The more you exaggerate your pain, the more it reveals you need nurture. Because nurture is the power of God's loving compassion to meet you where you're at, to tell you it's okay that you're not okay, and we're going to step by step work through this. People who have catastrophic thinking patterns lack nurture in a massive way. Massive. It's a signal you've not been nurtured. So I've pretty much summarized what this video is about in one sentence. People who catastrophize or get into catastrophic thinking patterns, they lack nurture. Nurture is God's gracious compassion and his mercy to look at you in your struggle, in your problem, in your suffering, to draw near to you, and in his kindness and patience, minister to where you're at and help you take steps. The problem is we have no reference for that. We don't even know what it's like to be nurtured. We don't even know what we're looking for. So when problems hit, all these dominoes start rolling, all this fire of heat inside of you erupts, right? And then we start going into self-pity patterns, and we start going, the world is coming to an end. Then you watch the news and you go, see, look at the whole. And one of the things that we have to realize as people of faith, as sons and daughters of God, we have to learn how to look at problems in the face. And historically, we've not done a good job of doing it. A lot of what we do when it comes to dealing with our problems are different patterns of avoidance and denial. You can throw scripture in and just, denial your problems and things like that. But so many things that we do to avoid it. And one of the things I'm going to share with you is catastrophizing is actually another way we avoid dealing with our pain. I'll let you sit on that one for just a second. Because you think, no, I'm neck deep in it. I don't know what to do. No, you've spiraled a pattern that doesn't let you actually see the problem for what it is, so that you can effectively now have some clarity on what your next step could be, or what you even need in a given moment. So this catastrophic thinking habit, you automatically lean to the worst case scenario. You exaggerate the pain. It's unproductive because it's so huge, so way out there, right? You ruminate on it, and it just enhances the unproductiveness. And what does it do? It increases the belief that you're helpless and there's nothing you can do. And then we fall into what I teach on: victim thinking, self-pity, I've done everything. I've done everything there is to do. There's nothing left to do. I've never done it. There's nothing I haven't done. I've done everything. Life just works against me. And we forebode, and we take that thinking pattern and we just forebode, and we assume what can and will go wrong, what can go wrong will go wrong, and then we have some proof from our history and experience, and we use that. The problem is you're now trapped. And here's an additional problem. Not only are you trapped, you're not actually dealing with your pain. Because you may be going through something where let's say you lose your job and your finances drop, and you spiral and you go into catastrophic thinking. I'm gonna be homeless out in the street, and and this always happens to me. And what happens is you drift into all these worst case scenarios. You know what you're not doing? You're not actually just feeling the fact that you're going through a hard time of finances. You're now drifting into the distant future, and you're homeless, or you're living in your car or whatever, and you never actually face what's in front of you. See, we don't think about that, do we? We're just like, oh, I am facing it. It's just, God doesn't help me. No, you're not really facing it. Catastrophic thinking is a protective mechanism. It's actually a protective mechanism. And here's one of the reasons it is. When people use catastrophic thinking, they say, well, at least I won't be disappointed because I don't get my hopes up. That's a protective mechanism. I'm not going to step out and have an optimistic, hope-filled view of what could be, or start to assume better things than always, assuming the worst. I'm going to start assuming that maybe some things could go really, really well, or that I'm going to learn something. Instead, we protect ourselves because disappointment is a part of life. You learn in the disappointments. You learn in the heartache. You learn in the struggle. And I think many times we get stuck in this, like, if we're Christians, life should just work. Even worse. And I'm going to challenge these sacred cows. I'm going to burn them. Let's just burn them. Have a barbecue. The sacred cows of if God's in it, everything just works out beautifully. Like, no, you go through stuff. You go through valleys, and you go through, I must not be in God's will. No, you're probably right where you need to be. But you weren't prepared for the resistance, the struggle, the trial. So what do? We catastrophize because we are not equipped. That Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble. And some Christians I know today would go, Jesus, don't claim that. I'm not claiming that because you just said it. That means I'm adding trouble because you just said we're going to have trouble. Right? With our superstitious, if you say it means it's going to happen, as though we're like serving God is like living in some voodoo spell kind of world. I understand the power of your words. I understand that. But I'm just talking about what we do to go to great lengths where we actually become more superstitious. Anyway, I bring it back to the point. And so we can develop this as a coping mechanism. I'm going to inflate this thing big, and I'll protect myself. Oh, this is going to be terrible. This is going to go really bad. And feeling like you're predicting the worst outcome. I find people that have catastrophic thinking, they often have a pattern in their life, a wound of feeling neglected and ignored. So the only way they feel like they can get someone's attention to talk about something is you have to inflate it huge and magnify it. It's a sign of neglect. It's a sign that growing up, and a sign that in life, you can't just casually go, yeah, I'm going through some stuff, and have people meet you and listen and you can process. Nope. You get ignored. Dismissed. Oh, you're fine, whatever. So it's got to be big, and then people will pay attention because they don't see the signs of what you're going through. So therefore it leads you, the only way I can get help is I got to make everything 911. So if not, I'm not going to get any help in what I need. And so catastrophic thinking, it leads us to a lot of unnecessary suffering because you spin in things you don't need to spin into. And I noticed in my life what helped me is realizing when it comes to many situations, I can really magnify how bad it is and minimize the ability I have in God to walk through this stuff. And you're going to have to recognize this in your life. No one can do this for you. You're going to have to recognize that in your life and journey, you blow up the problems bigger than you need to, and it doesn't allow you to see what you need to see. The Bible talks about magnify the Lord. Let's exalt his name, right? What does that mean? Magnify, to make him big. Why? Because in your life, what's the war? Make him small. Make your problems huge, right? And so we live by magnify my problems with me, and let's exalt what all the terrible outcomes that could happen in my life. That's the Bible of many people, right? And so then here's another thing that happens. You will recognize in your pain that you're in catastrophic thinking. You're magnifying it as you share it and express it. And then what you do, instead of recognizing it and just allowing yourself to work through the pain of it, you shame yourself and quickly dismiss and go, forget it. And you shut it down. You swing the other way. Just get over it. Why am I even talking about these problems, right? When you are in catastrophic thinking, it needs to be an informative cue in your journey that there's a massive, massive place of emptiness and neglect in your heart that needs to be tended to. So what we do is, if you notice the catastrophic thinking, you beat yourself up. Oh, I'm so dramatic. Oh, I can't. What's the matter with me? No, stop that. Because now you're being catastrophic about yourself. Instead, when you realize, wow, I'm really, really inflaming the negative outcome or how bad things are or how bad the world is. You know, Christians are notorious for this. Oh, Jesus is coming back. He's coming back quick. Oh. We're full of fear when it comes to the times we live in and the times that we're heading into. And we've got to get ourselves armed in faith, hope, and love, because we want to be available to be voices of hope and freedom for the mercy of the living God in every moment. His mercy is still fresh. His mercy is still at work. But if we're in the same fear and catastrophic thinking that many would of the world would believe, then there needs to be a shift where we start really walking in power, love, and sound mind, faith, hope, and love. So if you find yourself in this, don't beat yourself up. We all have aspects of this in our life. You have a problem you're going through. You need to see the problem for what it is. You don't need to see it dominoing all the way back to this problem, this problem, this problem, and see, and then everybody's, right? That's what we do. I've done it. Been there. As many times as you have, I have. But I realized I got sober. I sobered up. See, when I use the word sober, it's more than just not being on alcohol and being drunk on alcohol. I talk about sobriety as you see circumstances, you see things fully awake, you see them for what they are. Your senses are alert. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, right? Now, we don't have to be hyper vigilant, which is like, oh, that fear response, or the devil's around every corner. No, be sober. And I got sobered up that when I spin in catastrophe, I don't actually stay sober. I get drunk on despair. Ooh. Woo. That's a good word. That'd be like a organ in the background. I got sober because despair was intoxicating. You get lost in la la land of how bad my life is, how bad circumstances are. And you know what I'm not seeing? Just the problem. Deal with that with God. And then I get into despair and self-pity and my life, and nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows, not even Jesus, the trouble I see, right? This is a serious fight that's coming under people's thinking. So I got sobered up. I said, I'm not even facing the problem. And so then I began to say, I need to shift and learn how to shift how I see things. Through your love, that God, you are here with me. Whether I feel it or not, you're here. With that in mind, I'm going to learn how to nurture myself and be kind to myself and my thoughts so I can look at the problem for what it is so that then I can say, what's the one next step? See, that's when you break out of catastrophic thinking, you bring things back in, you ground yourself, and you go, okay, what's next? What's next? What's that one thing I can begin to do in God's grace next? You see, when you're compassionate over your pain, it leads you to a healthy now what? I feel this is tough. This is hard. I got to go through it. It'll take as long as it takes. Now what? What's the one step? I'm not going to alleviate this overnight. This isn't going to just go away overnight. Some of you are going through such thick storms. Stop trying to go, when's this just going to be over? Instead, just go, God's going to help me. I'm going to figure it out one step at a time. We're going to go through it. And it'll take as long as it takes, but it involves listening to the voice of nurture. Now, I'm going to give you some distortions that I'll quickly go through that influence catastrophic thinking. They keep them going. And some of this will get even into some anxiety, OCD kind of areas, but I think we could all benefit from this. One distortion is people with catastrophic thinking can often think everyone else is underreacting. It's like, no, this is really, really important. You've got to see this. And people are like, I hear what you're saying, but I think you're overreacting a bit. Oh, no. Because they feel their negativity or their dark despair or their gloom perspectives or things are just terrible is their healthy warning system. And it's not. It's their lack of nurture showing up. It's their need for nurture showing up. It's their need to be calmed and rooted in love that I'm safe and I'm okay. And so we have to confront that and recognize, it's not necessarily everyone's underreacting. I may be overreacting. And secondly is a fear-based thinking lifestyle. You lean to the fearful, so therefore darkness increases. If you have a propensity to constantly lean towards the what ifs, it welcomes darkness. Because the what if of fear is always going into the substance of things not hoped for. Not the substance of things hoped for. Fear is the substance of things not hoped for. And I talk about these things in my book, I Will Not Fear, because it's one of my deep passions to help people to untangle the root system of their constant fear perspectives. And here's something that I've noticed too in life is that there are many people in their fears, they get into catastrophic thinking, they get angry if you don't share their exact fear-based thinking. Boy, is that infectious in this world today. They get angry if you don't serve their fear. You get angry if they don't serve their dark, depressing kind of perspective. So number 2 is fear-based thinking. Number 3 that feeds it is these perfectionistic and internal pressures that we have. You carry like an all or nothing kind of mindset, black and white thinking. Basically, you have a distorted expectation. And so you need God to work in a certain way, in this certain manner. And when it doesn't happen, it's not just disappointment, it's massive despair. You're angry, you're upset, the world's coming to an end. You expect this for other people. They don't pull through for you in certain ways. You're super hard on yourself and you don't pull through for yourself. You give no room for mistakes, for learning. So then you start spinning, you start spiraling. Number 4 is one of the biggest distortions. This applies to a lot of things, even those I help who have OCD issues and problems, is distorted interpretation and meaning. How you interpret life and where you are, and how you interpret the thoughts that you have. This is the story. What's the story of where you are right now? Take a moment and pause and think, what's the story? If you were to give me a biography of where you are in life right now, what would it say? Those who catastrophize things will say things like, I never have this happen. I'll never get over this. The things that you say involve catastrophe. and things will never improve. They'll never change. And what you don't realize is that distorted interpretation. You guys say, well, no, you got some scriptures you throw into it, but it's blocking you from freedom, the truth that sets you free. It's not the truth. It's just a list of some facts. So what? Anyone can list out some facts of things that have happened to you, facts of things happen in your future. What is the truth? The truth sets you free. It leads you into freedom. But freedom is challenging to people who have catastrophic thinking, because their catastrophic thinking is protection. Because if I let that down and develop faith, hope, and love and start to walk in freedom and trust more and take new steps and heal, oh, that's dangerous. I don't want that. It's easier to just kind of stay in this place. Distorted meaning and interpretation. Take a moment. What's the story of where you at? Why are you where you are right now? Is it all your fault? Is it God's fault? Is it people's fault? Or can we back up a little bit and go, you know what? You've been through some stuff. And God's here. He's with you. No, and right now you don't have to fix 20 years of trauma, and you don't have to fix all these things in one moment. No. God's here right now. And I have found in the years of helping people, one of the greatest benefits I can bring to people's lives is even just in a moment of sit down, helping someone with a nurturing ear of listening and tuning in and giving feedback. I see this over and over again, where you see people at, it's the end of the world, like on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 10, everything's going wrong. And by the end of our discussion, they're down to like a 2. And they take a deep breath and they go, you know what? I can handle this. It's like they almost want to end the conversation and move on, because they're like, okay, I got this now. What did they need? Did they need a special sauce of the perfect recipe? Did they need the perfect guru to come and share the thing, or say the prayer, or lay hands and do the... No, what they just needed to do was get grounded in the love of God and have a nurturing moment. That's why people are starving for nurture. We're starving for it right now. Starving. We're dying from lack of nurture. That comforting instruction, that grounded, you're going to be okay, that learning to spiritually and emotionally take that deep breath, regulate, ground yourself. But without it, you lose meaning and interpretation. It's not what you're going through, it's your interpretation of it. Because you could be going through hell, but if you still have an interpretation that invites heaven, you're going to be just fine. You can have 2 people going through hell, and one is going through hell and they're listening to hell's interpretation. The other person's going through hell, but they have heaven's interpretation, and they land smack in Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because you are with me. I'm going to get through this. But I got to learn, my interpretation gets off the rails. Well, Mark, how do I ground my thoughts and the interpretation of my thoughts? Faith, hope, and love. Is my interpretation increasing love in my life and my experience of love in myself, how I receive it from God, how I love God back, how I love others? Is it increasing hope and a sense of my hope in my future? And is it increasing confidence to take steps of faith? That's the real estate where God is. Now, this is not just a self-help and just everything is always just great and easy. Life is tough. Life is hard. And it's actually through the pain you can find some of the most beautiful revelations of God, when we allow ourselves to go, all right, I got to go through some stuff. And it's okay. So let me take a minute and go further on this distortion of thoughts, because there's a bunch of them that increase this catastrophic thinking and give it more power, because we have these distortion regarding our thought life. One of them is the idea that we can prevent a troubling thought from appearing. Because many of us, the thought comes in and you catastrophize that thought, and it just leads you down the mountain. And so we think, oh, I should be able to prevent any unpleasant thought from coming. And many people live in that kind of cocoon. No, 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 don't think. And that intensity can often make things worse, right? So the idea that we can prevent a troubling thought from appearing, or secondly, that we think we can control any thought from, that we can now live in this like world where we're just going to control, and many OCD sufferers have this where they live in fear of even having the thought. And that gives the fear power. The heavy urgency of thoughts. I've got to pay attention to this. I've got to listen to this thought. It means something. And then there's a heavy responsibility that I've got to address this. It's this. No, Mark, this is my salvation. This is a repentance. No, I could get a disease. No, Mark, this is, right? And it will continue until we come to the end of ourselves and realize I have a problem in how I distort thoughts and how I distort interpretation. It can go into further things. That having a thought means that just because the thought appeared, it means it's going to happen. It'll cause it to happen. You can become superstitious. What do I mean by that? Many of you become very superstitious with your thoughts. If I walk past that place, that thought's going to arrive. If I smile while having this thought, it's going to mean I like the thought. If I do something with my body, or if I move into a certain position, or if I'm in a certain, we become very superstitious and we avoid all these little, this is what creates an obsessive compulsive world of all this protection we tried to create, right? We think having a thought communicates you are capable of doing this. And so we feel the emotion of the video that plays in our head, and we go, oh my. We catastrophize it. Instead of just going, it's just a thought, and letting it float on by. And downplaying that we don't have to have catastrophe for our thoughts. Because catastrophe doesn't help us deal with what we really need to deal with. Or worse yet, the thought could say, you want this thought. There's another catastrophe. You actually really want this. Oh, maybe I do. And maybe I should test it out. Do I really want this? Right? We get into all these different kind of hula hoops. Sometimes people have a thought and they catastrophize it. Maybe I did this. Maybe there's a time I did this thought and I don't know. I don't remember it, but maybe I did and I'm blocked off from memory. Do you see where catastrophe can take us? There's a bunch more here that I could list and share, certainly. Another distortion is the weight of responsibility is exaggerated, meaning that this problem is so big, and I'm not just talking about yourself. I got to do something about it, and people need to do something about it. And you know what we do? You know we do this the most with? God, you need to do something about this, quick. And we're upset that God is in panic right now. God, do you understand what I'm going through? You need to do something. You need to do something because I can't handle this, right? There's the exaggerating the problem and minimizing your ability in God to deal with it. And so we put this hyperinflated God, you've got to respond to me right now. You got to do something about this. Because number 7, the threat of thoughts or subjects is huge. God, this is my financial situation. This is my provision. God, this is a salvation issue. I'm uncertain. What am I going to do? It's a repentance issue. Oh, this thought, this unclean thought. God, people, this is, right? What's it? Lack of nurture. Lack of nurture. So therefore, a distortion that we give into number 8 is we equate safety means solving all my thoughts. I got to solve all these things. I got to solve the situation or solve my thoughts. And what it's revealing, no, the problem's not the problem. What you need compassionate grace and love and nurture to look at you and say, it's okay where you're at. No, it's not, Mark. No, it's not. It's the end of the world. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it, Mark. I can't take it. I can't take it. I'm at the end of my rope. People write to me, man, I can't take it anymore. This is it. Right? Catastrophizing. No, it's not it. You have more power available to you. What you're revealing is your lack of equipping and nurture, and you're hitting a cap. So now that cap where you say, I can't take it anymore, this thing that you're feeling is the level that is calling you to a new level, and what you're equipped in has only gone this far. And so God wants to take the cap off of your life and take the next step into the next level. This is why so much of the Bible's instruction is maturing us as sons and daughters. See, there are things that my kids do when they were 3 that were cute. If they do them when they're 15, it's not cute. Time to upgrade. If my daughter is still whining at 25 the way that she was at 3 years old, there's a problem, right? And what God is wanting to do as a good father is he's wanting to upgrade us so we feel stuck, right? And there's aspects of us that are still in adolescence. And this is coming from the lack of nurture, the lack of fathering in your life that didn't equip you to know how to navigate the transitions and stages of your life. It's okay, because guess what? God is a father, but we've got to learn to hear the frequencies. And when we catastrophize, what we do is it's a way of blocking what he might be saying over our situation, over our journey. We can't even hear it because we're listening to the noise of fear, the noise of doom and gloom. And I'll tell you what, fear has the loudest voice. It's got a very loud voice. And God's not going to compete with fear and try to scream louder. No, that's not how relationship works. Okay, so what's some tips to help you to begin move forward? And I'll give you some things, and you can ponder over them. Let God show you just some healing tips. These aren't things to like solve every problem in your life, but these are things I've learned and things that I would recommend for you. Is we first got to become aware of your tendency to lean to catastrophic thinking, that you tend to go to that. And this is very important. Recognition is very important because we spend a lot of time not recognizing what's really going on. If you still think the problem is whatever you're spinning about and don't realize it's the catastrophic thinking I keep falling into, then you'll keep spinning in the problem unproductively in a non-fruitful way. Many of you still defend your catastrophic thinking. You defend it and you get mad when other people don't join you with it. So do this with sobriety. Get sobered up, because spinning, spiraling, and self-pity and victim thinking, it keeps you drunk with thinking that doesn't let you see what you need to see and face what you need to face. Now, do it with compassion. Don't beat yourself up. No need. That's not going to help. That's not going to go anywhere. That's not going to do anything. But here's a very practical tip. I wrote the whole thing out on a slide. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this up here. When you notice those around you who love you saying things like, you're being too sensitive, or you're overthinking things, or you're being hard on yourself, let it be helpful and useful information to you. Because at times what we do is we find people don't say things really nice to us. They're not kind. I get it. We got a lot of that problem going on. But there is some helpful information when you notice people saying, hey, you're too hard on yourself. You're being extra sensitive about this. And you get this feedback on a regular basis from numerous people. Instead of going, you know what, no one understands me, no one gets me, let it be helpful information. See, sometimes we don't know how to handle the sharpening of life. You know, someone who wants a singing career, but no one ever told them singing's not really your thing. And then at one point, someone has to tell them, and then they spin out, but they never take that useful information and say, singing's maybe not your thing, so they can become more self-aware for life. So instead, I like to encourage people, we are sharpened by life. Yes, people are not exactly kind and rude, but what are the things we can extract for our helpful information? And when I started hearing people saying, Mark, I don't know that perspective. I want to think that through. And I have a number of people giving me that feedback. This isn't just somebody being mean to me. And so many of you that are catastrophizers, people have said to you, you might be blowing this out of proportion. No, I'm not. And you respond back because you feel like they're not being empathetic. And they probably aren't. And I get that. But sometimes we're just trying to do our best, in the best we can, to just say, hey, be aware of this. Use that as helpful information. Not beating yourself up. Use it as helpful information. Because I think that's an aspect of mental health, is that we allow some constructive, helpful, loving input to be informative for our journey. Because for many, it makes things worse. Number 3, We have to recognize, and this kind of ties into number one, but recognize that catastrophic thinking is not serving your journey. It's not allowing you to see what you need to see, how you need to see it. It's distracting you into a distorted reality. It's an alternate reality. It's not what you're going through. It's a version of it that's leading you into places. And if you'll notice, you may think that catastrophic thinking, it protects you in some ways, but it's not. It's distancing you from what you really need to face. And what you really need to face is feel what you're feeling, go through what you're going through, learn what you need to learn, and go through your journey. Stop avoiding your journey. Because when you hit the catastrophe button, it doesn't let you face what you need to face. My encouragement number 4 is recognize what you really need is nurture. Now, I always refer this course to people and help. My wife and I did a conversational set of audio that you can get on our website, Restoring the Power of Nurture. But more than that, it's going to invite you to go through your own healing journey in that, because we live in a pandemic of lack of nurture. And so it influences, people are not able to comfort themselves and let themselves know it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And God wants to heal that so that you can listen to the comfort of the Holy Spirit and that nurturing comfort. And that's why maybe I can't hear from God. I can't hear what he's saying. Well, do you have a frequency that knows what nurture sounds like? Because then otherwise, you're going to be someone who speaks English and you're hearing Mandarin and you don't pay attention to anything because you don't know the language. It means nothing to you. In the same light, if you've not learned the language of nurture, you're crying out to God and he's nurturing you back and you can't hear it. And then you go, God's not here. I'm speaking to the overcomers. You're going to get this. So if you find yourself where you're constantly venting over what you're going through, right? And to the point that you even get sick of it, right? You're just always venting about what you're going through. It is a sign of lack of nurture, because nurture shows you how to express it, how to discover God in it, how to feel what you're feeling and work through it and find the deeper places in the journey to lead you towards healing, to lead you towards maturity. So my exhortation to you, number 5, is going to be learn to be kind and gentle regarding your thought life. Because otherwise you'll jump to catastrophe, jump to worst case scenario. No, you don't need to. Let love settle you. He said, how do I do that, Mark? We'll start with being kind to yourself. I can't feel God. I can't connect God. Well, join the club, because a large percentage of Christianity today is in the same boat, because we have lived in performance-driven Christianity, and it just increases that sense of distance from God. And God's getting us back to his love and grace, and getting us to stop earning it, and all this stuff that we get lost in and feel distant from God, and all our wounded issues that come up to the surface. So what you can do right now is you can make a decision. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to stop beating myself up. I'm going to invite a gentler and more kind response to my thought world. The more that I've practiced that, the more I have seen dramatic growth in my life. It has calmed me. It has settled me. It has helped me to get my root system dug deeper and to strengthen me in the midst of storms. So it's so important. Now, number 6, I have to highlight this. In our healing journey, we need to learn to see things as they are. Not catastrophe is always things are worse than they are. I want to face the problem that's in front of me, that's coming to the surface. I don't want to add unnecessary baggage to it. And sometimes what adds unnecessary baggage is despair and thoughts like, no one's got it as bad as me. I'm the worst. It's like we get competitive in who has it the worst. I'll tell you what we can do. Get a history book and read generations and cultures of the past, how hard people have had it all across the world and all. And that's not to demean what you're going through. It's to recognize, I need to see this for what it is. I'm an overcomer in progress, in process, and so is everyone else. And hardship is a part of it. And I'm learning in it how to discover who God is, discover who I am, and I'm going to learn to be kind to myself in it. That's how you learn to see things not worse than they are. See it for what it is. We need to sober up because we get drunk with despair. No, I don't have to go there. I can see the problem for what it is, the heartache for what it is, the battle for what it is right in front of me, because that's how God works, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. So what's my radar in the healing process? Well, my radar number 7, I want to encourage you to let your compass be on faith, hope, and love. How can I learn to build love, which then increases my hope and increases my faith? That sequence helps to move you out of catastrophizing the worst case scenario and to then instead seeing, you know what, one step at a time, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to work through this somehow, some way. I don't know. I'm going to stop blaming God, blaming me, blaming others. Instead, I'm going to let compassion wash over this. And start by how you talk to yourself. Start with your self-talk. Talk with the narrative that's going on inside of you. What are you listening to? What's it saying? And invite faith, hope, and love to now ground and guard where your thinking is going. And then I want to close with this. In the atmosphere of compassion, here's what I found, is I want to see what's the one next simple step. And I find that when I let myself, sometimes when I've been through hardship, going through a really hard time, I just let it out, put it all on the table. Maybe it's in a discussion with someone, or maybe it's just in my prayer time, my solitude time. And I put it there and I express it. I get fully out there. I don't spin out. I don't blame things. I don't get into all these. What I do is let the problem out for what it is, what I'm feeling. And as I emotionally allow that, it's like, now what? Okay, that's the next step I need to take. Got to make that phone call. I'm going to make that phone call. That's what I'm going to do. Not this. Nope. Just that one thing. Right? And many of you are going through a trial and you sit there and you spin out. You go, you know what? I need to get some help and do some one-on-one with somebody. I'm going to take that next step. I'm going to fill out a form or make a call or whatever to set up that appointment. You know what? I'm going to, to use the illustration of the person who lost their job. You know what? I'm just going to start looking for what potential opportunities one at a time. That's all I can do right now. You see, because that's what compassion does. It takes into consideration what you're going through. And it says just one thing at a time. Not a million things. Nope, that's not what you need. It's not 10 steps to 8 steps, 7 steps, 6 steps. Nope, just one. You didn't get here overnight. You're not going where you're going overnight. It's not even about that. It's about the journey anyways. So if you feel like you know what, I recognize where I need some added nurture in my life, I recommend the audio course, Restoring the Power of Nurture. I also want to encourage my book, The Heart Healing Journey, because it helps you to navigate things that are important to the life of the heart and help you see the things that can be helpful for your journey. But I pray that this episode has been a blessing for your life. I pray that it's a blessing for those that you are talking to and ministering to. And I just pray that you be encouraged, that you don't have to be bound in catastrophic thinking. You can break free. And I've been there. I know what many of you are sharing and talking about. And I pray that what I've been able to share with you has been a blessing to your life, to your journey, and help. If it has, consider supporting with a one-time donation, or you can become a regular supporter. And we appreciate that so much. We appreciate prayers. We appreciate the encouragement. Most of all, I pray that grace and love of God and our Lord Jesus Christ would just continue to wash over everything that you're taking in. I pray your healing and freedom journey is empowered. So looking forward to sharing more great insights with you. Continue to live healed and free. Blessings.